Right, part two. Sorry about that. The postman knocked on the door. I didn't know which button was pause, so I had to stop, start again. C'est la vie. We're talking about UFO.
Yes, I'm always talking about UFO. To be
I
honest.
know you are. I know you are. I think this is one of the greatest quotes in guitar history.
Uh-huh.
Right, Paul Chapman. I think human beings are notable for a lack of tact and insensitivity, right? It seems to be built into most of us. And what could be worse than saying to Paul Chapman, how do you feel about replacing Michael Schenker? Like, why would you say that? Why not say, you must have got through an audition process of everyone and their dog to get that job.
Yes.
But instead it's, how do you feel? So Paul Chapman in UFO was asked, how do you feel about replacing Michael Schenker? And his reply was, I'm fine. I replaced Gary Moore in Skid Row.
Well, what I found funny as well about that was because Paul had been in the band earlier, I think 75.
I've got a live album with the two of them.
He had done that, and like the story was that him and Michael were like got on really well, and if they were gigging, I've got a couple of bootlegs with the two of them. They would room together, so it wasn't like Paul was replacing somebody who he didn't like.
Yeah.
And it just seemed to be, so he'd already been in the band. He'd done his other stuff, so he was obviously, he had the talent to be in the band. So I get that people would turn up and say, "Oh, who's replaced Schenker?" But I think he came into his own in the later albums, and although it's different, a slightly different UFO, I like both periods equally as much, I have to say.
When that happened, the Paul Chapman era that you're talking about, which would be No Place to Run,
The Wild Wilderness.
Mechanics,
And
the other one's four. There's one that I always forget.
It was 83 one, it's the one with the cold cover.
Yeah.
It'll come back to me when we're talking about something else.
Were you aware, were you a fan, if you like, of Bruce Springsteen at that time?
Yes and no.
Because anyone who was a big Bruce fan...
Making contact,
thank you. Anyone who was a big Bruce fan would, and Pete Way alludes to it in his book, what was Phil thinking about? Writing all these songs. And I remember being at the Playhouse, and they've got a song that is, to all intents and purposes, very, very like Jungle Land, which at the end of it, Phil Mogg implores to the skies, Jungle Land. And I thought, maybe this audience are not Born to Run fans, so they don't know, but it sounded like Phil was just so taken with the whole Bruce.
I can absolutely see that, because I remember a review maybe in Kerrang at the time, they said Phil, on the Making Contact album, Phil was definitely gone more a sort of Springsteen storytelling thing. But you're absolutely right. To me, that was not a point of reference for me. I'd maybe casually heard a couple of Springsteen songs, but I didn't listen to that album at that point in time and say it's very Springsteen-ish. But now I can hear it and think, oh yeah, he's got that storytelling Springsteen thing about it.
But the funny thing is, if you listen to the lyrics on With the Action, it's fantastic. It's on a par, I would say, with Bruce. In terms of, as the ambulance pulls away and the girl calls out more.
Yeah.
And it's just a brilliant street violence, urban decay piece of songwriting. So he obviously had that, and a lot of the songs have got that prior to this, but then everyone seemed to have this massive Bruce influence.
I think so. I don't know if that's why Pete left, because like Pete's whole thing was we were just getting...
We're just rockers,
we're just rockers. He produced the Colony Rejects album.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to rock, and I think he was like, Phil's wanting to go down the Springsteen way. We've got Neil playing saxophone, and he's like, let's just form Wasted. Let's work with Twisted Sister and form Wasted.
The only thing analogous to that, I think, is a lot of Lizzie fans think that as great as Darren Wharton is musically, there should never be keys in Lizzie. And I think people think, what was the sax doing in UFO? Now, that's just about my favourite UFO song, other than Love's Lost Love, is Lonely Heart.
Yeah.
Which revolves around the sax.
I mean, I have to say, like, when Thunder and Lightning and stuff came out, although Sykes is playing guitar, like, with the keys, I'm thinking, not a huge fan of Keysington, was he?
Yeah, and that basically that's the last album, isn't it? Yeah. Did you see Lizzie a lot of times?
No, I only saw Lizzie once. It would have been. Would have been when the Mama's Boys supported them, whenever that was? Can't remember.
I saw them supporting Badminton Overdrive.
Right.
When
It
Brian
was
was just in the
definitely after that.
And then I saw them at the Cardiff Rock Festival.
Right.
Where the bill was, bottom of the bill, Lizzie, and it was between Fighting and Jailbreak. Because I can remember when we all got back home, we were all going, what's that brilliant song that it goes like bab, 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 bab.
Right.
But we didn't know what it was.
Didn't know what it was.
Wasn't on the album.
You just remember the guitar. You couldn't really go into John Menzies in the Monday and go, it goes
a
a bit like this.
Yeah. I used to go into the record shop in Llandudno every single week and go, have you got Fighting by Thin Lizzy? And it just seemed like it was taking months to finally come out, and then I went in one day and there it was, the notorious cover. You know, them all holding the knives and stuff. The third on the bill was Special Guests Man, because it was Wales. Second on the bill was Steel Eye Span, the sort of folk band.
Yeah.
And top of the bill was 10cc. Is that right? Well, that's quite a bill. Yeah.
10cc. To go back, I did actually go into John Menzies and Bathgate to. It was the Pretenders when they released Stop Your Sobbing.
Oh,
and,
wow.
and I heard it on the radio the weekend, and I went into John Menzies, and like you said, I didn't know what it was, so I decided, and I do not have a singing voice, so I decided to. The lady says, I don't know what it is, can you sing a bit? And I tried to sing Stop Your Sobbing, and she just said, I've never heard that in my life, and so I didn't get it.
When they played at Tiffany's, Cinderella Rockefellers, they had been booked to play that club gig. And in the meantime, the first album, which is a good call for greatest debut, greatest cover, it's got everything.
Yeah, got a great guitar playing and everything.
Great guitar player. That was number one in the charts, much like Rod Stewart with Every Picture and Maggie May. So Pretenders was number one in the album charts. Brass and Pocket was number one, and they still had to honour the contract, so they had to play in this tiny club.
Playing Cinderella Rockefellers.
Yeah, so you got to see them in a little club.
Ah.
James Honeyman Scott, I know.
Yeah,
you know. You know, you were saying about Black Sabbath. I quite like the idea. Oh, pardon me. That first album, that's one of these. Could be best debut. Could be best cover. Could be my friend John Phillips, the repair guy. I said to John once, how about Sabbath as the most influential band of all time?
Could be. I mean, certainly because I came along a bit later, the album for me was my mate Deck We Sold Our Souls for Rock and Roll, which is the double album with the black cover, just the Sabbath logo. I think that maybe came out in 1980 or something like that. I'm sure I studiously sat down and learned every power chord riff. I hadn't figured out they played in C sharp by that point, so I was still playing it wrong. But for about a 6-month period, I'm sure everything I played just sounded like Black Sabbath because I thought I need to learn this. So that double album was a massive sort of influence on me learning chordy stuff. I couldn't play any of the solo stuff, but just learning power chords, it was like that was a huge album.
Was Michael the first guitar player that was like, that's my guy with you? Was he the first that, like, that is my favourite player?
Joe Perry, you mean? Or Michael?
Schenker. Was it Joe Perry? Yeah, you said well, I was going to say Joe Perry and Deluxe, but they both did.
They did both. I'm trying to think when I was trying to play lead guitar. I think I wasn't listening to stuff that was too hard. Like, I would like players, but I'd never tried to learn it. I always found Michael stuff just too hard to play. Even now, I'm nearly 58.
It's a nightmare, isn't it?
It's so difficult to play. So like I could appreciate people like Michael, but it was way beyond my capabilities. I think I was easier playing Skinner stuff, not because I think Skinner stuff is much easier. It seemed I could hear what they were doing more.
Yeah,
it seemed to be more kind of blues based
Yeah.
than Michael's almost neoclassical stuff at times.
Do you think there's a huge disconnect between what we consider to be difficult or not so difficult, or what the public in general? Because I have this constant discussion with people, where I always say, lots of jazz guys think they could play like Johnny Thunders. They couldn't, but they think they could. And you like what is more difficult than Paul Kossoff? What would you'd have to get the sound, the vibrato, the tension in it, the intensity in it. There's all these things. What I'm trying to say is the obvious hard thing is not, I'll do Miola on Race of the Devil on Spanish Highway, which by the way is unplayable. But
yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah,
I agree with that, yes.
But it's not just things like that.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think as well when you're talking about people like Kossoff, if you had to try and replicate that on the gear he was using, like now, you and I are like we're so used to you can get like an amp, you can 10 different sounds on it.
Yeah.
How he could do that with a Marshall or a Super Lead or something like that, with not a whole lot of gain, but he got that amount of note sustain, and you obviously playing at incredible volume. But if I had to be in a room with that gear, it's like I couldn't get anywhere. There's more chance of me playing above a Michael Schenker solo, to be honest, than there is than me getting anywhere near the sound of Paul Kossoff.
The first time I saw Wishbone, they had, if my memory is correct, they had on either side of the stage angled like that way and that way. Andy Powell and Laurie Weissel both had an orange 4x12 and an orange head. And the whole Wishbone sound that I adored and adore to this day is this clean, echoey, wistful, melodic thing. And the show started with Laurie running to the front of the stage and playing the start of Mother of Pearl, which is the most grungy, overdriven thing you could ever imagine. It's very hard to imagine. It's like with all the technology today, if you said to me, what's the greatest guitar sound? It'll change from day to day.
Yes.
But I was listening to the Brussels Affair, the legendary Stones bootleg that everyone has always. This is like an itch you can't scratch. And I'd go to record fairs and say, "Have you got the Brussels Affair?" And it's now available legitimately in the Goat's Head Soup box set, but you have to buy the whole box.
Right.
But it's well worth it, right? And I don't know if it's well recorded or if it's not recorded brilliantly or what. Mick Taylor's guitar sound in that. That was 50 years ago.
Yeah. It's hard to replicate someone that accurately using that gear. And even the stuff that we get these days, like you can get a little bit of the way there.
Yeah.
But you can't get that tone that precise. It's almost like it's a moment in time that you're never going to be able to replicate.
I was listening to the NME used to give away these flexi discs.
Yeah.
And one of them was Mick Jagger at the piano, playing this sort of boogie woogie piano piece, and he made up, I assume on the spot, a song that had all the titles of Exile.
All right.
Like I'll meet her tonight, and drink from her loving cup, and we'll go all down the line, and then we'll roll some tumbling dice. It's better than that, by the way. But he worked in.
Yeah.
It'll be rocks off, blah blah blah, and we'll rip this joint. So it's all the songs. And you can get that in a CD, and the last 5 tracks are the Australian tour in '73.
Right.
And Mick Taylor's sound is unbelievable. Even on a bootleg that's maybe a radio broadcast, it doesn't seem to matter. You listen to it and you go, I assume it's like, him and Keith had the amp pegs.
Yeah.
But,
just great tone, whatever he's using.
Yeah, I mean, I will die on this hill. It's whatever it is, and we all bang on about what guitar and what amp. It's the guy.
Yes.
It's the guy. The sound comes from the guy. As I say, I will die on that hill.
Absolutely. Like, I said earlier on, I did a gig last week and I was using a Fender Twin, which I mistakenly thought if I turned up really loud, it would be overdrive. It turns out it just gets really loud and really, really clean. But once I figured it out and turned it down a little, and I used my overdrive, but I watched a video of the gig, and I thought, I just sound like I do And with any other combination of amp and guitar, which it'll be because of the songs. I'm still playing the same songs in the band, but I'm not hugely different using different amps. It's still me doing what I do, good or bad, whatever it may be. It wouldn't make a huge difference. So yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot made of it's in the hands, but I think it's more to do with your personality, the way you've learned the guitar, the way you interact with other musicians, and how you all sound together. Like I'll sound like me, whatever I'm doing.
When I did a lot of guitar lessons with guys, the question is always like, how can I play this? How can I learn this? I want to show. Somebody once said to me, "Show me something impressive." I said, "I can't, because it won't be impressive if you're just playing something to impress people." And I've always said to people, all you can do is play your personality, and that will apply to anyone. If you think about Gary Moore and how he played, and then you think about Mark Knopfler, from what I've never met either of them, but from what you know of their personality, Eddie Van Halen, it will apply to any great guitar player. They play their personality. Paul Kossoff, just the angst.
Yeah.
You could tell he was a very, very troubled young man, and you can hear the angst in his playing.
Yeah, absolutely.
All you can really do is play your personality. And the other thing is, I think we get it wrong all the time, because I'm sure you like the Satellites. George the Satellites.
I thought they were alright, yeah.
When they came along, there was nobody like them.
Absolutely.
I remember seeing the display in HMV. I was like, I thought rock bands had gone.
Yeah.
And there was these guys who were obviously rockers by the look at them. And Dan Baird had said he saw it's sitting right there, Rock and Roll Animal, Lou Reed. He was at that show.
Right.
The Academy of Music in 1973, and he said he sat there going, Junior and Marshall, got to get that sound.
Yeah. Junior
and Marshall. Now, you should never name drop. Elton John told me that. Boom. I was talking to Steve Hunter about it,
right,
and he said to me, actually I use a high one.
All right,
And Colin McFarlane, who's another big fan of those two albums, said to me, it's not Junior or Marshall. Steve played to a high one.
I mean, you find that a lot, like people say, the sound in the first Zeppelin album is great, to hear Page with these Les Paul and stuff. And it's like, well, that's not the case. And then you read, it's only decades after the event. Were we not talking about Montrose, like the first Montrose album?
Yes.
Ronnie isn't using a Marshall.
No, he's got the bandmaster.
He's got a bandmaster, and it's like, but
speakers.
If I put that album on, like when I first heard it and I heard it now, I think that's a brilliant Marshall sound. But then it turns out not Marshall.
Yeah, it's maybe the greatest Marshall sound ever, but it's not Marshall.
Yes, yeah. And you can imagine the amount of people who've gone through the last 4 decades going into a guitar shop saying, I want to get the same Marshall sound that's on the first Montrose album.
That's the sound I really want. Do you know, like Rock the Nation? That sound. Oh yeah, Marshall. What's He bought it at a what do they call it? Is it a flea market?
Yeah.
What we call a car boot sale.
Yeah.
He bought it at a flea market a week before they recorded the album. And I'm sure I read in the interview, because he's been asked about it, when he was alive. Ronnie Montrose, by the way, is one of the great neglected guitar players.
Yes.
He's up there with anybody. The
huge amount of work he did as well. Like if you get into Montrose, you think, those 3 albums. Was Jump on it, the last one? I can't remember.
Paper Money, Jump on It, Warner Brothers Presents,
and the first one.
Yeah.
You think, that's his body of work, but then you think of all the stuff he did way outside that before he was involved with.
And then he did that Gene Pitney thing, A Time Without Pity.
Right.
About 10 years before its time. This idea of the guitar being the melody and this passionate, intense, dramatic guitar instrumental. Much like I suppose Beck did with Cuz Revenge is Lovers.
Yeah.
It just was not really done at that time. But he said they had one of the speakers would blow.
Right.
So they had all these speakers that would have to get recoined, and they'd put another one in. But the 3 speakers in the bandmaster would just blow constantly.
It sounds like, it's hard to work out, but it sounds like it's turned up full, and it's like it's almost sagging under the sound pressure that's coming out of that.
Yeah.
But then I guess the other thing you've got to take into consideration is like the board EQ So like when it's being produced, there's going to be EQ for the board on that as well. So it's always difficult to say. You know, like,
Yeah.
if you listen to, for example, like the Scorpions or something like that, and you think that's a classic Marshall sound, but maybe that is a classic Marshall sound with tons of EQ on the mixing board to add a bit more middle and stuff like that. So it's always difficult to get an exact tone
Yeah.
from an amp that you hear on an album.
And a lot of people now say that Matthias Jabs had that Boss DS1. Not
Right.
the overdrive, the distortion.
Yeah.
And that went straight in the disc. And you know, when you hear like all the stuff like Big City Nights and all that stuff, do, Rocky Like a Hurricane.
So he's using that, aye.
Using a pedal straight into. I always think that about Jane by Jefferson Starship.
Uh-huh.
You know, when I hear that sound,
Uh-huh.
I always think, I wonder if I live. I mean, I had this conversation online last week, and I was again banging on, you know, I'll die on that hill. I was saying, like, you're Gary Rossington,
Yes.
guitar cable amp.
Ah, yeah.
That's it, no pedals, nothing. And one of my friends said, yeah, but you're not taking into account the mics and where the mic placement is and whether it's mic and whether it was there and the EQ and the desk, which I accept. And I sort of countered that in a way by saying, well, if you'd stood in front of Gary's amp, that's what it sounded like. It would sound like him. It's guitar cable amp.
It was amazing the sustain he could get just from that, like just from his fingers, just the vibrato he's using.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never used one of these PBMA amps, but you know it's not Marshall.
No.
But just the sustain and stuff he was getting was just.
My friend John I knew lots of guys who had juices.
Right.
And that was a 120 watt one. I had a classic.
Right.
I could never work it because there's 4 inputs on the front, and there's this foot switch that said parallel series combined select.
I do remember. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I had a friend who had one of them.
And one time at rehearsal, you know, I'd press this and I'd go into parallel and press combine, and then I'd go, and I'd say to people as if I knew what I was talking about. I'd go, well, I think series is one channel into another, but combine is both at once. I just make this up in my head because it sounded right. And once at rehearsal, I must have been doing all this, and somebody said, "Man, what a sound!" And then I never got it again. It's just this.
Could you remember what you did?
I believe they call that option paralysis.
Yes.
When you have too many things, you know.
I do that, but I found that I've been using a Kemper like for recording.
Oh right, yeah.
For the last 2 years or something, and like every single bit of gear that I get, I end up with 100,000 options, and then within about 2 weeks, I've got a Marshall sound, I've got a Fender sound, and I've like a Roland JC 120 for clean. So I've got, I think the Kemper's got 600 amps. I use 3 settings, and I just turn the gain up on each one.
This is a really difficult question because the answer is that neither is no. But years from now, if people say the great guitar sounds, will it be Ronnie, Paul Kossoff, Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin 4, or will it be this era of fractal Kempers? Do you see what I mean? Or are these things, will they replicate? See what I mean?
I do, and I know, like if I'm in a rehearsal room, I want to be playing through a valve amp. Excuse me, if I'm on stage, I want to be playing through a valve amp. But then I see bands like Metallica, for example. Metallica are touring, or band of that ilk are touring with Kempers. So to a band who've sold 100 bazillion records, they obviously think it sounds good enough, and they think it's good enough that the audience think it's good enough. So, I can see people doing that. I don't think people will say they can tell the difference, but I think in an A/B test, I'm not 100% convinced. So, I think to answer your question, I think people will say that the guitar sounds now are just as good as the old ones because I think they're replicating as good as you can get, and I think things will only get better. Like if you go back to like the first Boss multi pedal, or what's the B thing? It's not
pod.
Like, pod. I remember when I got a pod, I think this is the best thing I've ever heard. It was like I'm never going to need an amp again because I've got this tiny little beam and it's got every sound in it. But now when I plug in, I think there's something a bit lacking in this. So technology is always moving forward.
I took a Zoom 1010 to rehearsal a couple of weeks ago. I brought it.
How did it sound?
Well, we didn't plug it in, it's played through my amp. But I brought it along, and on the bottom of it is taped like A1, A2. It's like I've only got 6 sounds, like you say.
Yeah.
There's 146 sounds.
Yeah.
And I'd said to John Phillips, I'd said to John, can you get me a sound, can you get me a Gary sound, a Carlos sound, and a clean twangy sound like Clapton on Wonderful Tonight, and that'll do.
That's all you need, eh?
That's it.
And we'll just forget the other 123 memory locations, because all we need to, that's true, it is an option for artists. So I think people will say the guitar sounds these days are as good as the old ones, but simply because the ones are replicating now are the old ones for all intents and purposes, really.
Do you think that we play quieter than back in the day?
Apart from me last week, yes. No, I do. I at one point I had 2 50-watt Marshall heads and 3 4x12s.
Yeah.
And I would take them to the band I was in were doing okay, so we had like roadies and stuff. I could not ever in my life imagine nowadays turning up to a gig with anything more than a single 4x12 and a 50-watt amp. At a big gig, if I'm doing a smaller gig, I've done a few gigs recently. I got one of the amp 2s, the Black Star amp 2, and I've just DI'd it straight to the PA.
Yeah.
So the only sound I'm getting on stage is from a monitor. I think people at rehearsals, I don't think people are playing any quieter, but at gigs, I think people are playing quieter. But then, I'm 57 years old. I think if you were 17 and you're turning up to a gig, maybe you want to play as loud as we played when we were 17.
Absolutely. What's the loudest band you've heard? What's the loudest thing you've ever heard?
Samson, when they came on, they were sporting Blackfoot in April '82, and I think it was the first time I'd seen like a spot, and I was quite down near the PA in the Playhouse, and when Samson started, I literally could not believe how loud it was, and it was very middly as well. Paul Sampson had a very sort of middly guitar sound.
SG, didn't they?
And my ears were literally ringing for days. I've probably seen louder bands later on, but at that point in time, because I was quite close to the PA in the Playhouse, which is a big rig, it was just, I thought I could see the sound waves in front of my eyes. It was like it was affecting my, watching the band, I was like, I cannot believe how loud this is.
Mountain is the loudest I've ever heard, and my ears were ringing for days. But regularly in tribute bands, I've played gigs where my ears have been ringing the next day.
Yeah.
But that just doesn't seem to happen now.
I still have ringing ears after every rehearsal.
Do you?
Because our drummer has one volume, and that's the volume he plays at. So yourself, everybody has to compensate.
Absolutely.
You have to be as loud as your drummer, and then maybe just a wee bit more. And everybody starts compensating for that. And our bass player's a bit deaf, so he compensates by turning up another 3. So I have to go to at least 3.5. So I still rehearse as loud as I ever did. But at gigs, sound men don't appreciate you being too loud.
Like you said, Dunsy said to me earlier before we started filming, the second guy said to you, you're not even in the mix.
It was a big stage with a big rig. I was using the Fender Twin. I wasn't really overly familiar with the Twin. I thought I could just turn the master volume up. I did like to start. It did not at all. I was playing at 4 on a Twin, which I think are only about 20 watts. And we did a song on a big stage, and I said, I think I'm way too loud, and I just heard through the monitors, the monitor guy going, I didn't even have you through the monitors, you were so loud.
Yeah. I do find out that when you go to a big gig now, right after COVID, when I think all of us were like, right, we didn't realise how much we loved doing this, going to see live shows. I'm going to go and see everything, It's never as loud as you think. No. It was in the old days. Maybe that's our ears, but Billy Idol was not that loud. Brad Paisley wasn't that loud.
I wonder if that has to do as well, we were talking about earlier, like the use of technology. If people are using technology like Kempers and amp modelers and stuff like that, it's easier to keep the volume down.
Yeah.
Because I saw Toya about 5 years ago, and she was playing the Liquid Rooms. Nobody on stage had an amp.
Yeah.
There was no amps on stage. Both the guitar player and the bass player were using iPads on their mic stand. They were changing live,
Wow.
and the only sound coming from the stage was the drums.
Yeah.
And he had like a baffle around his kit. So I mean, that was. So I don't know if technology has a play in this as well. People don't have to play as loud anymore to get the sound.
Well, in that case, what must be gone, and you're probably going back 6 or 7 years, the ABC in Glasgow. I saw Europe.
Yeah.
One of the best shows I've ever seen. And I went right down the front, and Johnny Nolan's got 50 watt head and 4x12 and backup.
Yeah.
And he says a couple of the effects, and he's always saying it's the most simple thing ever. And he's got the Les Paul, he's got some of the Les Pauls down tuned, and the famous white Strat, and you could hear his amp. Now, in this era of bands using like Kemper and Fractal, that would be impossible. You're never going to be able to stand at the front and go, I can't actually hear the amp.
One of the things I miss most about going to big gigs, and it was always like gigs like the Playhouse, just when the lights were going down, you could hear the amp hum. You could just hear the hum of the amps through the PA. And like this is like late 70s, early 80s. I guess when people brought in like noise gates, like you don't hear that anymore. Like when I go to a gig now, before the band come on, I'm always like going, I need to hear that amp hum, I need to hear that amp hum. Well, with these fractals and stuff, I mean, I guess you could do it, but there'd be no reason to do that. So, yes, I agree with that. It sounds great for the band on stage. It sounds good if you're at the back, coming through the PA, because there's not a lot of stage noise. But if you're down the front, whose amp are you getting in your face? Nobody's.
There's nothing, absolutely nothing. One of the first examples when I was very young of anyone I knew seeing like a real band was one of my friends had been to see Tear Gas. And before they were the Alex Harvey band without, and it was one of these things. I think he was playing in a golf tournament or something. He was about 13 or 14, and they all went to the local village hall and Tear Gas were playing. And he said the hum of the amps was deafening. Right. Just before they played a note.
Aye.
The just And if you put on the CD of Sticky Fingers, you can hear this like static hiss before they play Brown Sugar.
Right.
And there's something about that it's exciting.
Yes,
that moment, you go.
I suppose like these days is people are balancing up what you're losing by what you're gaining. I guess if you're in a big touring band, if you're using like fractals and Kempers and stuff like that, then you're going to get the same sound every night. The audience is going to get the same sound through the PA. So you're gaining that reliability. But you're losing the concert experience of being down there at the front and getting hit. Like I remember going to see Bob Mould at the venue, huge fan of Bob Mould, and he was using two Fender Twins, an industrial volume, and it was so, going back, maybe that's the loudest gig I've ever seen. Like you wouldn't get that anymore. You're not going to get that because somebody's probably says, health and safety say that's too loud. You can't do that anymore.
Do you remember John Perry in The Only Ones?
Yes.
Right. In the punk era, I remember one of my friends saying to us, anyone who says these guys can't play, which the music press were saying all the time, the punks can't play. He said to me, anyone who says they can't play has just not listened. And he would let me hear all these punk records, and I was, new wave punk records. And you'd have to put into that, obviously, John Perry's a fantastic player.
Yeah.
The guy in Doll by Doll, James Honeyman Scott and Pretenders broadly came into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
John Perry was online recently on something on YouTube, and he said, if you want to get the Johnny Thunders sound, Johnny Thunders had a twin, but he turned everything all the way up.
All the way up, including the reverb.
Yes, and if you don't know what that's like, it would be coma inducing.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And he pauses for dramatic effect and says, including the reverb.
Yeah.
Now I saw them at Clouds. It's I'll never forget that night. The bill was first up was the Models, who became Adam and the Ants, by Marco Perrone, famous vintage guitar collector. Next band was Susie and the Banshees, and I saw a clip of them on Top of the Pop. Susie and the Banshees is I think when they had Hong Kong Garden. Yeah. And that's about a year after. And it's a terrible thing to say about anyone, about a band like these guys can't play a note. But when you saw Susie and the Banshees, it was literally unbelievable. That's some self-belief to get up and for her to intone the Lord's Prayer and the rest of them to make this cacophony. And then, it's like, are they turning up? Because, there's the notoriety of Johnny Thunders and his crew. And it's like, this is about midnight. Are we gonna get to see them? Are they gonna? And suddenly these guys in like long leather coats, holding these vintage Gibson cases, and they just looked like mafioso hitmen. And they walked in, and it's one of the great shows I've ever seen. Him and Walter Lewis both had twins, and they played Lamp, played the whole
We
Lamp.
don't think, yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't think you could Kemperize that sound. Like I think you'd be struggling to get Johnny's tone through a bit of electronics.
Yeah.
You'd be struggling to do that.
Again, one of the things. I mean, it's like when. I mean, I just seem like, and I really don't mean to be such a contrarian when I say some esoteric pedal with an 18-month waiting list isn't going to do it. There's no such thing as a Dan Huff pedal. There's no such thing as a you see people saying now, oh, it's a plexi in a box. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I
mean, it may be, if you recorded it and played it back, it may sound slightly like that. But if you're in the rehearsal room, and it's not like standing in front of like 100-watt plexi head. That's not the same thing.
When I was young, people used to always talk about making your jeans flap. Obviously, our jeans were wider in those days. Yes. But people used to talk about making your jeans flap. That's what you wanted.
My legs are a bit wider now, but my jeans are still the same.
And people used to talk about this like your jeans would flap.
And it was, going back to talking about how loud you played when you were younger. I mean, I think it was you wanted to experience that volume that you'd people with jeans flapping, and it's like I was playing that loud because I thought this is how it needs to be done. This is how people rock by playing this loud. It's only when your ears become, a bit damaged when you get older.
I think sometimes in a rehearsal now, I'm sort of thinking everyone's playing really well. I'm not kidding myself. Everyone in the band's really good. It's just a bit on the quiet side. Could we all just pep it up a little bit? Yeah. Next question. What is the most difficult thing about the guitar?
Oh, for me or for people in general, you think?
Both.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, I think the most difficult thing about guitar is sticking with it. Like I was thinking back to people I've been in bands with over the last 40 years, and the amount of people who played for a while and then just other things in life, so they came along and they just stopped playing. So to me, getting past that hurdle of being able to play a little bit in the first place, so you get to the point where you think, oh, I can play a couple of tunes, but then sticking with it for a long period of time, I think that defeats a lot of people. I think a lot of people, and I don't mean to use the word dedication. I don't think you have to be dedicated to doing it, but I think you have to retain enough interest.
Do you believe that statistic? I think it's Fender came up with it. It's at 9. Everyone took up the guitar during COVID because the idea is that everyone had a lot of time. It's 90% of people who buy a guitar give up within a year.
I believe that. I think I would believe that. Because you know yourself, like the first guitar you get, it's not going to be the easiest playing instrument you're ever going to own.
No, and it's impossible. It's like, the first guitar I had, which was a nylon string guitar, it did not occur to me what the frets were. And there was no guitar teachers or tutors or books or anything. So I kind of thought, well, you've got these 6 notes. So every song's got to be a combination of these strings. But then there's that period where you've made some headway, and it's like there's a massive leap up, and then everything is tiny. Every increment.
I agree with that.
It's tiny.
I agree, and I believe the 90% thing. I think what they should do is when people buy a guitar, you should say you're going to have to learn an F chord, because you know how hard an F is. Like they play those first two notes on the first fingers, and say, give yourself a week. If you still want to play guitar after a week of playing this F chord, then you're sticking with it for life, because you put that effort in to hurt your fingers and to do it. So for other people, in general, I think the hardest thing about guitar is sticking with it, finding the time to keep doing it when your life becomes a family, and you're kind of going through your life. I think putting aside the time is a difficult thing for a lot of people. For me, the hardest thing, the one thing I wish I had done, and people always say, "Well, you've got time to do Dunsy, you've got time to do it," is learn a little bit of musical theory, because I see people doing stuff, and they'll do things, and then they explain why they did it, and I think, oh, he did that because, whereas I would do it because I thought it sounded good. It would take me like a day and a half to work out what was sounding good. So for me personally, I wish I'd had a bit of theory.
See, being honest on this one, this will not come over well, but I'm just going to be completely honest about this one. And you and I do the same thing, broadly speaking, on YouTube.
Yes.
You know, and a few times people have said to me, could you not just go third string, like say it was I Ain't the One,
Yep.
Can you not just go second string, 17th fret, you know, bend that and then go 15th fret, then third string, whatever. And there's a voice in the back of my head that wants to say, if you can't be bothered learning the notes, the names of the notes, I can't be bothered teaching you. And you know, I would be bothered. You know, if anyone asked me to show them anything, I would do it. But there's like, you know, it's not that hard to go, you know, this one's F, and it duplicates itself, so that one's got to be.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I get that completely. I mean, to me, I think if I knew a little bit of theory, it would make my playing better from the point of view that I wouldn't have to spend as long thinking about what I'm going to do. I think I would maybe still end up playing the same thing, because like going back to like the early Beatles records I had, it's all about the melody. So I'm not doing anything that I don't hear a bit of melody in.
Yeah.
So even if I had a little bit of musical theory, I don't think I'd be playing, you know, like diminished runs, because I don't find that pleasing to my ear. So
unless it's patrol.
Yes, like that sort of thing. I think I would like to learn a little bit of theory simply from the point of view it would have saved me time later on, because I've learned everything by ear. I think I would like to have, maybe that would have helped my playing a little bit. But as you said about 5 minutes ago, that would have got me up to the level where I wouldn't have really got much better over the next 30 years.
It'd be tiny.
I would have plateaued.
Yeah. Have you ever come across, like, what's something this is like my favourite personal question. On YouTube a few times and on Facebook I've said, what's the guitar solo you've always wanted to play but you've never really got there? And I've always said, I'll start you off. You know, I'm not shy in saying, you know, this one beat me. And mine is Charlie Sexton, Beach So Lonely. I've never got anywhere near that. And
you need that Yamaha guitar, that's
yes,
playing on the tube.
And Timmy Pierce on Living in the Nose. And my friend Alan said, push comes to shove, Van Halen.
Right.
And he said, and again, it's always, it's not that, it's obviously some things I can see that's hard. You know, you can go, well, that's obviously hard. You can see it's hard, right? But there's a lot of things in guitar that make it hard, that for different reasons.
Yeah.
And Alan said to me, push comes to shove. You know, Eddie Van Halen says the timing and the phrasing, and that's always the hard bit. But
yes.
You want to know something? I mean, probably over 50 years, I've wanted to be able to play, and I'd sit with the guitar, go, it's the start of Midnight Rambler.
Right.
Right. It's a cap at the 7th fret.
Is he playing the standard tuning as well?
Yeah. And if you don't know Midnight Rambler, it's only ba-dum, 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 ba-dum. There's a cap at the 7th fret. And he plays an E and then a D with the open string. I saw someone do it, I didn't figure it out myself, you know? That'd be another 50 years.
I think I would name two solos for different reasons why I like them, but the same reason why I've never learned how to play them. I think Prowler by Iron Maiden, going back to my early story, when I got that acoustic guitar, that is still one of my favourite solos of all time, Dave Murray. And I watch people playing it, I've seen Dave Murray playing it loads of time. It's not that difficult in the scheme of things.
Is that on the first album?
Yes. It's a lot of hammer-ons. I think he's playing an E minor pentatonic. He's doing really, really fast hammer-ons. So I would love to be able to play that, but I've never really tried. And Professional Violence by Paul Chapman. I'd love to be able to play that as well. And again, I don't think that's in the scheme of difficulty and dexterity, I don't think that's a particularly hard song to play. But as you just said there, the phrasing of that solo would be beyond me. I don't think I'd be able to play that because I don't have the same phrasing, and I don't want to try and play either of those two solos because I love them so much. I don't think because of my 40 years of playing, my phrasing is completely different for those two guitar players. I don't think I would play them properly. I think I could hit the notes, but I don't think I could play them properly, and I wouldn't want to play them.
I mean that's the thing. There's like playing the notes and getting something to sound right, and sometimes you can go, those are the notes, but I'm just not getting it. Just not getting it.
People on some of my videos, if I'm doing a cover or a lesson or something like that, they'll say, have you got the tab? And I occasionally do guitar tab for some of the stuff I do. But what I've found is that, excuse me, and I do it myself. I sometimes occasionally find guitar tab. You're just reading something, and you're just reading a note. That's taken away that talent of being able to hear something and playing it from ear. So when I'm sometimes learning solos, if I can hum the note or I can whistle the note, that's how I find it. If you're reading tab, you're just reading things on a page. It's taken away the skill set of being able to hear something with your ear and try and learn the phrasing, because I know some tab has a timing, but that's not the same as hearing something and going, oh, he's going quickly from this to that to that to that.
Yeah, and that's another thing about lessons is I've said to a lot of people, you can sing it, you can play it.
Yeah.
But, could you sing Kacharlaman? I can. Because it goes out, it's like, it starts off in C major and then, goes into something else. I wouldn't be able to sing those notes. So
No.
You'd have to find them. I mean, sometimes these things, it's just a case of somebody saying, one of the things I love most of that is when somebody says to you, do you want to know where he plays that?
Yeah.
And you go, oh, like Midnight Rambler, but the classic for me is Rebel Yell. It was actually Tommy Paxson said to me, you have to play the boom, boom, doo, doo, on the bass string, but you have to tap the high strings and get that reading. And I saw him do it and I went, oh, that's how he does it. And I love that.
I do. You did the solo for Boom Boom Out with the Lights, the Pat Travers with the thrall bit.
That's well, yeah.
And you were doing that diminished bit, and I remember I commented on your video going, is that how he does that? Because I did a whole video on that album, how when I first got the Pat Travers live album, I must have been about 14, I knew I would like it, but I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
The playing on it was way beyond what my ears could take in at that point in time. But it's become one of my favourite albums of all time.
Right, yeah.
And when you did that solo, it's like I can hear Thrall playing that, and then you said, "Oh, you play it here." I was like, "Oh, that's how it's played."
I actually, that lick is it's in a lot of things, I suppose, but it's in Gary Moore doing the Stumble.
Right.
And he's so euphoric at the end. It's when Gary's got his long hair, he's got the suit, the Soldano head, and he's playing the Stumble, and he obviously just gets into his head that I think I could, and he hits it so perfectly. And if there ever is a banana skin on the guitar, it's that line, right?
Yeah.
But when I remember there was an interview with Pat Travers it was in Beat Instrumental, and the guy said, "So who's doing all that really fancy stuff on
Go for what you know."
Yeah, and on Snorting Whiskey. Right? Is it Pat or Pat? If you listen really closely to the studio version, it's not only is it that diminished round, it's tracked in harmony.
Right, so he's doing it twice.
Yeah. And I think what that means, like for anyone who doesn't know, a diminished scale or diminished chord is like up 3 frets, up 3 frets, up 3 frets, up 3 frets, up 3 frets until you get to the North Pole. So I think any diminished run would, so he's starting on A and C, and then he's going up a string but moving up a fret. That's where the banana skin. So if he then starts on E flat, that'll harmonise with it. So he can do the same run but just at a different point.
Way beyond me.
Me too. Yeah.
So your whole thing, I love the fact that like I hear something that I've listened to for years and I've never worked out. I'll go on YouTube and there's David Macy. What's this we diminished, but I'm like, oh man, that's how you do it.
Do you know there's a guy went on my YouTube page and like I can almost imagine his voice. Well, obviously I've never heard his voice, but in my little pea brain I imagine his voice to be very pissy, right? And he said, do you know really what you should do is only share these videos with your close friends. Then you wouldn't have to listen to anyone critique your lack of ability.
Cuts deep, eh?
It cuts deep. It hurts.
So, someone commented on one of my videos recently, and I don't normally remove. I don't think I removed the comment. I think it was just a review of a guitar. I don't think it wasn't particularly about my playing, which I'm quite surprised about. But this comment simply said, "You don't know what you're talking about. You should stop making videos." And I think I just left it because I thought, you know, but this is somebody who has never posted anything. You know, I think I'm at 800 videos, but somebody would think I'm going to read that comment and go, you know what, you're right. Yeah. I'm just going to close up shop and just stop doing YouTube.
Any of the, and there have been quite a few unpleasant comments that I've had. The first thing I always do is always go, well, let's see what your comments like. You know, let's see what your content is like. And a couple of months ago, a guy said, you should learn a lot more before you attempt to teach. Whoa, you know.
I mean, you think the people that do this kind of thing have studied long and hard how to cut to the quick, right. You know, and the least amount of words possible. And I guess the trick for people like you and I, other content creators, is like, don't take a step, read it, take a step back, and say, fine. I'll move on to my next video.
But I mean, you must have, you know what it says, you've got, you know, like 5,000 likes, pardon me, and it'll say, you know, you've got like, you know, however many thousand comments.
Yes.
And you kind of go, and you know, people say to me, you've got 10 bad ones. But those 10 ones cut to the quick.
I watched a video about it recently, not about guitar playing, but just about this kind of negativity, and it's like, it's human nature is to try to be liked. It's human nature. So when somebody leaves something that is disliking and is really quite hurtful, that weighs on your mind 100 times more than the fact somebody says, that's a fantastic bit of guitar playing, David, that's really good.
See,
human nature.
If you ran the 100-metre dash and someone's timing you and it's like 8.4 seconds or whatever, you're faster, there's no argument about that. That's it. End of story. But I think a lot of guitarists, myself included, a lot of times you go, is this any good? Am I just kidding myself? Is it any good? You know?
Yes, I agree with that, and I think that goes back to my thing when you said what's the difficult thing about guitar playing. The first bit is like retaining your interest, but retaining your confidence and your own ability.
Yeah.
And I found recently, I was talking to my wife about this the other day there, about doing live gigs. It's like I won't be doing live gigs forever because I can feel my own dexterity kind of diminishing a little bit now. There is things that I could remember playing when I was younger that I can't play now, and I think it's just the result of getting old. It's not because I'm ill touch wood, or anything like that. I think it's just because the natural process of aging is that you don't have the dexterity that you used to have, and that's just.
And you know, when people see, I don't know about. I can only speak for myself, but when people see, sometimes you'll make videos all day and everyone's a first take. I don't edit anything because I don't know how to, right? So I can't get, like, here's a 3-minute solo and I did well for 2 minutes and then I screwed it up, so I'll just edit it. I don't know how to do it, so you just get, you know, the real McCoy. But on Friday afternoon there, I tried to play the start of Star Star with Goat Said Suit by the Stones.
Yeah.
And it lasts about a second and a half, right? And I must have been, by take 16, I was like, I'm not letting this beat me. And I was saying in my head, if I get to take 22, if I mess this up 22 times, I'm giving up, you know?
What I find, like if I'm having to learn something, I don't do a lot of tutorials for solos and stuff, but if I'm doing a cover and I'm doing the solo, I will spend like 3 or 4 hours of an evening learning how I think it goes. Then
Yeah.
I don't record it that day. I find if I come back the next again day, for some reason my muscle memory has retained what I was doing. I find it easier to go back the next again day and do something, but I do still end up on take 16.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I do a lot of editing,
Right.
but I do try and do the solos in one take. I have to say I do that,
Yeah.
but they're not necessarily the first take. It is a take, not the first take.
And that is a pig, because some solos are really long and they go on for quite a long time.
It is. I did, and I didn't even do the solo in it, but I did a version of Diamond Head. The title track of Borrowed Time was lasted about 6 minutes, and it took me so long to be able. I think I maybe did it in about the second take, but I spent a week playing through it religiously,
Yeah.
so that I could do it in one video,
Yeah.
one take. So yes, and it was like I need to do that. I can't. I don't edit videos together, so it looks like I've done the whole thing. I will use a take that I've done. It's just necessarily the first take. But in that particular song, it's 6.5 minutes that I did in one video take, and it was like, I don't want to do this again. It was just too much.
Do you know there was an album? Do you remember Mike Varney in Shrapnel? Yes. Right. Mike Varney brought out an album called US Metal.
Yes,
right, and it was a picture of all these like GI Joe guys, with their rifles and stuff. Yeah, it's metal. And he was interviewing a guitar player, and this guy said to him,